Hi, Crime Junkies. I wanted to bring you something a little different while you wait for next week's episode. I'm calling it a briefing. This is a case that's pretty new, and the hope is that we can get this story far and wide while it's still fresh, and maybe one of you will be able to solve it, and we can keep it from becoming a cold case that gets featured in full on our show. So listen closely. I'm briefing you today on the missing person case of 21-year-old Jonathan Hoang out of Arlington, Washington. Sometime before dawn, March 31st, 2025, unbeknownst to his family, Jonathan walked out of their home with only the clothes on his back, his iPad, and headphones, and he hasn't been seen since, which is extra concerning for his parents because though Jonathan is 21, he has autism, and psychological evaluations say that he's cognitively at the level of maybe an 8 or 9-year-old and not able to independently care for himself long term. Because Jonathan lived a very structured and ritualistic life. What authorities and the Hoangs agree on, and there isn't much, is that Jonathan wasn't forcibly removed from his home. But what drove him to walk out the door that night, they have separate theories on. Police are firm in their belief that no third party is connected in any way to Jonathan's disappearance, and he was not a victim of foul play. His parents, however, believe someone with influence over Jonathan lured him out of the house, and they point to a couple of pretty compelling pieces of evidence as proof. 1, heightened anxiety in the time before his disappearance. 2, a scent trail that stops in a cul-de-sac by their house. 3, a recent change in security settings on his devices that would have allowed him to talk to a stranger or someone outside of his family. 4, there's a single point of activity on Jonathan's iPad days after he disappeared. And 5, there is surveillance footage from almost 3 months after Jonathan disappeared that his family is sure shows Jonathan. So let's break it down. Around the heightened anxiety, in the 2 weeks before Jonathan disappeared, he seemed more anxious than normal. Now, his parents attribute this to the fact that they had been trying to nudge him toward more independence. He recently started a job training at a nearby Goodwill store through his school, and his family says that he didn't want to go. He actually called out sick for 2 of the 4 scheduled sessions. And the night that he disappeared, he told his dad that he wasn't feeling well, and he said he didn't want to go to school the next day. Point 2, the scent trail. So when authorities did an initial search of the area for Jonathan, his family says that dogs picked up his scent on pavement at the end of a cul-de-sac down the hill from the Hoang's house. But that's where the scent stopped. And that makes the family wonder if Jonathan could have gotten into a car at the bottom of the cul-de-sac. 3 is the security settings. So a few weeks before Jonathan disappeared, his parents removed the security restrictions on his iPad and iPhone so that he could communicate with his job training supervisor at Goodwill. That meant instead of only being able to message his immediate family, Jonathan could send or receive messages to anyone. I mean, they know he sent at least one text to his supervisor at Goodwill and texted an image of his state ID to a paraeducator at his school. But they don't know if anyone could have sent other messages to him through his iPad, which they have been unable to locate. Which brings me to point 4, his iPad activity. In their own effort to find Jonathan, his dad tried using the Find My feature to locate the iPad that his son took with him that night. The last location showed their house before he left and presumably disconnected from their Wi-Fi. So the family reached out to Apple. Jonathan's family gave them the model, the serial number, and Apple support confirmed to them that the iPad connected to Wi-Fi and someone navigated to the Apple App Store on April 2nd. That is 3 days after Jonathan went missing. Where it pinged from, we don't know. The family said that Apple wouldn't give them that location without a warrant from law enforcement. And then there's point 5. The surveillance footage. On June 23rd, someone who looks a heck of a lot like Jonathan was captured on 2 separate security cameras in Kirkland. Now, this is over 40 miles away from Arlington, where his family home is. But Jonathan's family is convinced that the man on the camera is their son. And they're really convinced that he was trying to get home for a few reasons. First, the man was walking in the specific way that Jonathan walks, doing the same vocal stims and hand motions that Jonathan does. He's wearing clothes that match items Jonathan owned and that his family says they can't account for. The second is one of the cameras he was captured on was from a house Ring camera. That house was on 114th Lane. Jonathan's home is on 114th Drive. And if that's not convincing enough, Jonathan's dad says that the Ring camera house has 2 columns with a faux rock facade just like Jonathan's family's home. Now, the Snohomish County Sheriff's Office does not agree with the family. They say there's no evidence of a crime, and they conducted extensive searches of a wide area in his neighborhood, beginning the morning he was reported missing, and they found nothing. And even though the dogs stopped at the cul-de-sac, they point out that dogs aren't perfect, and there's not proof that Jonathan got into a vehicle of any kind. And unfortunately, there was no sign of Jonathan on any of the neighborhood security cameras during that time. The sheriff's office says they've been in contact with Apple, Microsoft, and Verizon. All companies have cooperated with them, and they have no evidence that Jonathan's iPad connected to the App Store or had any activity at any time after he went missing. Now, we showed them the messages his family exchanged with Apple support, and they just reiterated their position. They have no evidence that Jonathan's iPad connected to the App Store or had any activity. And they say that because there's no evidence of foul play, they don't have a basis for a warrant to serve on Apple to get location data. They also don't believe that the surveillance footage in Kirkland is Jonathan, but they also have never identified the man in the video. Not being on the same page as law enforcement has made the Hoangs feel like they're alone in this. When Jonathan went missing, his parents jumped through a bunch of hoops to get emergency guardianship over him so that they could advocate for him legally, and also just so they could access information about him. They've already had it extended twice, but their attorney says a third extension is extremely unlikely, which means Jonathan's family will lose guardianship of him on Tuesday, August 19th. That's in 6 days. So they're hoping this video might reach someone who knows something before then. Do you know where Jonathan is? Do you know who is seen in that video footage that was filmed in Kirkland, Washington on June 23rd between approximately 10:30 and 11:04 p.m.? Can you help in any way find the iPad that he took with him? According to findjonathanhoang.com, here are the steps you can follow if you see him. Stay with him or in sight of him. Do not leave. Ask if he's Jonathan. Immediately call the 911 emergency line because time is of the essence. After 911, contact Crime Stoppers. Take a photo or video, as this will be the fastest way for the family and law enforcement to confirm whether or not the individual is Jonathan. There is a $100,000 reward for information leading to his location being offered through Crime Stoppers. You can also reach out to the Snohomish County Sheriff's Office directly at 425-388-3393. And if you want to reach us, you can email tips@audiochuck.com. Thank you for hanging around for this briefing. Now, go find Jonathan.